All right, now let's talk about the 5-year plan for progressive victory. And let's talk about hope, and let's talk about why it's justified. So this time around, obviously we lost. Why am I so sure that we're going to win next time? Well, time and young people are on our side. So this time we got outvoted by older people. But let me show you some numbers here. This was true in a lot of the states, including, for example, Missouri, and we talked about it that night. Roughly speaking, 70% of under 45-year-olds voted for Bernie Sanders. You know what that means? That means the future is ours. It's just a matter of time. So later, I'm going to talk about the 5-point palm exploding heart technique. I'll explain what that means. But this is part of it. And so those are under 45-year-olds. It used to be under 25-year-olds, and it was under 35-year-olds, and now it's under 45-year-olds that we're winning, and we're winning in wide margins. But you want to talk about under 35-year-olds? This is from Quinnipiac in late January. They did a poll. Bernie Sanders had 53% of under 35-year-old Democratic voters. Joe Biden had 3%. So I get why folks can be despondent in a time like this when progressives got wiped out in 2020. But this is ironically the worst time to get despondent. We actually got them. We just have to build on it, and in the ways that I'm going to talk about here, and the future is all ours. Now, I know the skepticism, and the mainstream media will throw this out too. It's not at all true, as I'm about to prove to you, but they'll say, oh, no, that doesn't mean anything. This is another mythology that they put out there, which is, young people are always liberal, and then when they grow up, they become conservative. No, study after study shows, actually, once your political ideology is set when you're younger, it hardly ever changes. Here, let me give you one piece of evidence, but again, the meta-studies have shown this is fairly indisputable. How about Reagan, right? And you think, well, Reagan was very conservative back in the day, and so he must have won the older voters and lost the younger voters, but won anyway. No, I went back and looked it up. So let me show you how Reagan did in 1984 with under 25-year-olds. Reagan won 61% of under 25-year-olds. His Democratic opponent, Walter Mondale, only won 39%. Well, if you say, well, okay, Cenk, I get it. You know, Reagan did well across all categories. That was a blowout election. That's true. So he must have done way better with older voters. No, not true. With voters that were 55 to 65, same exact percentage, 61-39. And 64% for above 65-year-olds. So almost all the age demographics back in 1984 were conservative, including the very young. So it is mythology that the young are always more progressive. It's not true. So are they more progressive now, or was just Bernie Sanders a fluke? Well, I've looked at dozens of polls and shared a lot of them with you on the Young Turks and shown you, no, the young are massively progressive on almost every issue. But I'll show you one here because it's a pretty good barometer for how you view government and how you view community versus individualism, which is, should the government do more to solve problems? Now, let's take a look at it based on different age groups in America today, and you'll see the vast differences. So the group that is oldest is called the silent Americans, the silent generation. Only 39% of them believe that the government should do more to solve problems. Now, there's a great irony there because they get the most from the government in the form of Social Security and Medicare. But it doesn't matter. They got brainwashed when they were younger, and they got brainwashed by television now. So even though they benefit the most from the government, they say, no, the government should do the least. The boomers are the second worst in that regard. They get the second most from the government, and they believe in the government the second least, 49%. Generation X is at 53%. Millennials are at 64%, and Gen Z is at 70%. That is a massive difference. So the younger generations are totally progressive and will remain progressive. So, guys, in a macro sense, hang in there. We got this. Again, I'm going to show you the details of how we're going to actually win those in a second. But let me give you just a little bit more here in terms of the dynamics today. So in Mississippi, it's not just the young that agreed with our ideology. It was broad-based. So, for example, in Mississippi, 65% of Democratic voters wanted single payer. Well, that's great. They had a candidate in there that was for single payer, Bernie Sanders, and he was up against Joe Biden, who definitely does not want single payer. He said if Medicare for All, which is single payer, makes it to his desk, past this Congress, he would still veto it. So did 65% vote for Bernie Sanders? Nope. The exact opposite. So Joe Biden won the state of Mississippi 78% to 18%. Why did that happen? Because of media. The media told him Joe Biden is more electable. Don't worry, Joe Biden and Bernie Sanders agree. You'll get a guy who's almost the same as Bernie Sanders, but he's going to beat Donald Trump and Bernie Sanders is going to lose to Donald Trump. So that propaganda is massive and made all the difference in the world. Okay, so let's go to the 5-point palm exploding heart technique. Yes, this is from Kill Bill. Yes, it is a metaphor. It is not literal. Plus, it's not real. Okay, your heart doesn't actually explode. So if you haven't seen the movie, it's a supposed martial arts technique where you hit someone in 5 pressure spots, and they think they're okay. They walk away, and then their heart explodes. The reason I'm using that as an analogy today is because we've already done half of this, and we need to do the other half. And once we do these 5 things, they don't know it, but 5 years from now, their heart's going to explode. And we're going to win the elections, and we're going to have the country. Okay, again, guys, just a metaphor. So let me show you the 5 things on the list, and then we'll talk it through, and I'll tell you why I put those things. So number 1 is TYT. Why? That's a placeholder for media. These are all placeholders. These are, right now, what I think is the best we got. But if others come in and do a better job, fantastic, okay? TYT in the media. For grassroots, it's our revolution. For congressional elections, it's Justice Democrats. Oh, there's surprise number 1. Number 4 is JankPack. What in the world is that? We'll explain that in a second. And number 5 is Wolfpack. So let me walk you through this. So why is TYT the first thing on the list? Because as I explained to you, media is everything. It sets the tone. It sets the culture. So does it have to be TYT? No. But it has to be someone willing to lead. So if it turns out The Nation, which is a great publication, figures out a way to unite progressive media and make sure that we get progressive candidates the exposure that they need, fantastic. Then it'll be The Nation and not TYT. If the Majority Report does it, if The Intercept does it, fantastic, great, I love it. It doesn't have to be TYT at all. But right now, is anyone else in media trying to unite progressives? Not as far as I can see. I hope we get a ton of competition, and I hope everybody tries. I hope people cooperate. But for God's sake, if you watch TYT, you know we have progressive candidates on all the time. We have progressive issues, people advocating for progressive issues, progressive causes, progressive organizations on all the time. And we try to unite people. The TYT network is not just the Young Turks. It's not just our Young Turks shows, but it's also other shows online that don't get nearly enough attention. Secular Talk is amazing. Majority Report is fantastic. You got Michael Brooks. You got the Humanist Report. You've got Ring of Fire, and it goes on and on and on. And they're all part of the TYT network. So we're going to do even more to unite that, because if we don't unite our message, our candidates are never going to get enough attention and branding and name recognition to be able to win. In fact, let me show you the pyramid here as to how this works, okay? Because then when we go to the next stage, when we talk about our revolution, that's a placeholder for grassroots. So then you've got candidates, legislation, and amendment. I'll walk you through all of that, okay? But so let's start at the grassroots here. And then I'll show you another pyramid that has TYT and JankPack in it and show you the different roles, okay? But when we're talking about grassroots, guys, one of the things that I learned both from the presidential election this time around and also my election is name recognition is everything. So I did something that in hindsight is foolish. I tried to run a race in 3.5 months. there is no way in the world, if you are not already elected from that district or are mega famous, and I'm not mega famous. If I'm famous at all, it's Xiao Xiao famous, a little, and apparently definitely not enough, right? And I never had that delusion in the first place. I thought that working together, we could all get enough name recognition in 3 months. It turns out that's not remotely possible. So what does that mean? What is the lesson learned? That means you've got to start at the grassroots and work your way up. Please run for local office. So the reason I picked Our Revolution there for the group that is doing that, and please check them out on their website and in all social media, is because that is one of the groups, but the group that most focuses on, hey, if you're running for city council, you're running for state office, you're running for any of those offices, they've got groups in your area, very likely, who are going to be your volunteers, who are going to endorse you, who are going to help you out and help find a way to get you victories. Honestly, when they started, I thought, we got to go get Congress. Why are they spending so much time on the grassroots? We're going to win in 2020. Well, I was wrong and they were right. We did not win in 2020. It was too short a timeline. We have got to get in there, win elections, so that the next time you're on the ballot, people have already seen your name. And then by the time you're on Congress, they've seen your name several times on the ballot. It is so important to get that name recognition. So let's move on to Just Democrats. So obviously, if you can't get enough people in Congress, you won't be able to pass legislation. And that's the whole point. As you look at that pyramid again, the grassroots is to build up the name recognition, to be able to get candidates who could win in Congress. But what is the point of that? So what if all of our candidates win, but we don't pass any bills? We must pass legislation. So in this case, for me, I think the most important thing, and for the country, is to regain our democracy. If we regain our democracy, progressives do so well on almost every issue there is. And so if we had an actual democracy, we'd win almost all those votes and we'd get all those bills passed. So Medicare for All has always been about 50%, as high as 70%. So, but if all the candidates win and we don't get the legislation, then there's no point. So that's where Cenk Pack comes into play. Look, guys, I don't know that that's going to be the name. I mean, I've been telling you that these groups are wonderful, but if there's better groups, fantastic, and they could be placeholders. The name Cenk Pack is even a placeholder. So soon we'll be announcing a pack where we will be running ads to help progressives. Now, the first target of progressives will be Donald Trump. Why? Because Donald Trump is an absolute disaster. I'm worried that the Democrats don't know how to be tough, don't know how to fight Republicans, oftentimes are half-hearted in fighting Republicans. And so if they can't do it, we'll do it for them. Will we go around praising Joe Biden in a way that is disingenuous? No. Will we be happy to attack Donald Trump? Yes. But what we really need in the long run is for someone to say, hey, if you vote against progressive priorities, there's going to be consequences. And the consequences is if you're all obsessed with money, well, then we're going to spend money against anyone who votes against progressive priorities. If you're not willing to play that hardball, you're not willing to win. And we're not going to, just like playing patty cakes with Republicans doesn't work, playing patty cakes with corporate Democrats is never going to work. It's not like Nancy Pelosi and Chuck Schumer are going to turn around and be like, oh my God, you guys wanted Medicare for All and Green New Deal? Oh, I didn't know that. You know, I have a poster in my basement from 30 years ago. You know what? I'll just give away the tens of millions, hundreds of millions of dollars that we're getting from our corporate donors that actually give me my base of power, and I'll just do what you guys want. No, they're not going to do that over tea and crumpets. You've got to play hardball, and that's why you need a pack like that to make that happen. And finally, at the end of all this, if it works, the amendment is the thing that we need most, because that rewrites the code. That is what I've been telling you for a long time. The Constitution is the code that runs our government. And right now, unfortunately, the Supreme Court has interpreted in such a mangled way that they say that private financiers can come in and buy any politician they want. They can give him $1 million. They can give him $30 million. They can give him $50 million. Sheldon Adelson does this on a regular basis. The Koch brothers do it on a regular basis. Multinational corporations buy off politicians, both Republicans and, yes, Democrats, on a regular basis. If you don't fix it, you're never going to get to the right place. But that's the final part of the puzzle. So, look, fill in the groups there. Let's go to the pyramid that has the groups. Again, if it turns out 3.5 years from now, it's different groups that are in this pyramid. Fantastic, no problem. But for now, the grassroots is our revolution. Congressional candidates are just Democrats. A tough progressive pack that fights corporate Republicans and corporate Democrats, and then wolf pack. Okay? So if we do all of that, we will win. Time is on our side. And it's not just the young. Under 45-year-olds is gigantic. Next time around, it'll be under 50-year-olds. The election after that, it'll be under 50-year-olds. And on and on and on. We actually have a ton of reason to be hopeful. But guys, if we don't unite and we don't have progressive media helping progressive candidates and causes, well, then that demographic advantage will have gone to waste. If we don't have progressive candidates who win and then build the bridge behind them, it'll go to waste. If they get into Congress and they go, well, the corporate Democrats didn't want it, so I guess we'll give up, then we won't win. We need fighters, and we need to stick together. We need a media that's going to stick together for us. We need candidates like you guys, and I'm going to show you throughout the show on the Young Turks how you could win local elections. In fact, we're going to do that next on the Young Turks. And then we need those folks supported all the way up the chain until we have enough legislators to be able to pass the laws that are going to change your lives and change them for the better. If we do the right things, we win. It's guaranteed. If we don't unite and we don't do any of those things, then we will squander this massive advantage of having all of the younger generations on our side, and we will lose. So it's up to you guys. It's up to all of us to execute this in the next 5 years so that we could win the 2024 elections, both at the presidential level, but also at the congressional level, legislative branch, and all the way through the grassroots. So let's all do it together right now.
Thanks for watching the Young Turks. Really appreciate it. Another way to show support is through YouTube memberships. You'll get to interact with us more. There's live chat emojis, badges. You've got emojis of me, Anna, John, JR. So those are super fun. But you also get playback of our exclusive member-only shows and specials right after they air. So all of that, all you gotta do is click that join button right underneath the video. Thank you.